Hey guys, it's Dean. Welcome to the Better Man podcast. Today I am joined by Barry Power, who has, like many of you, been doing manful yoga since the pandemic. So, Barry, thanks for chatting with me today.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. So, um, so I understand you were doing some physio. You had some leg pain. You had some lack of core strength issues that you were working on. Is that what brought you into manful yoga?
Pretty much, yeah. So just before the pandemic, we had a family ski trip while my son was home from university for a week. And as I hadn't been skiing for a few years, and I really noticed how out of shape I was.
Mm,
Towards the end of the day, I fell and ended up with some back pain as a result of that. So I was in physio. He said that I needed to strengthen my core, which I knew after a day of skiing.
hmm
And was doing some exercises when the pandemic hit. I started looking for stuff online, and that's when I found Manflow. And I had done yoga previously,
hmm
so I was pretty familiar with it and knew some of the positive things that could come from it. In terms of, I had previously had plantar fasciitis and was able to clear that up largely through yoga.
hmm
So it was a pretty comfortable transition for me to go to joining Manflow Yoga.
Got it. How old were you when the skiing incident happened?
Um, I would have been 55.
Okay. Were you relatively active up until that point, or had you been active at one point in your life and then it kind of just fell off at some point?
At the time of the skiing wipeout, I had been sedentary for a couple of years. I had been fairly regularly going to the gym
Mhm,
previously and just kind of fell out of the habit.
mhm.
And was getting back into it just before the pandemic as well.
Yeah.
So I knew that I had a lot of stuff that I needed to improve. So
Mhm. So I like to bring up this idea of like this oh shit moment where you
mhm.
realize like, oh wow, I'm not as strong as I used to be. I need to make a change. Was there that moment for you? Was the skiing incident that, or was it just kind of a softer, oh, I'm gonna start working out again?
um, the whole ski day was sort of that moment for me
Okay.
because I could tell that my legs were a lot weaker than they had been the last time I had been skiing. My core was a lot weaker. I had been snowboarding previously as well, and so you need a lot of core strength to do that. I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure I would not have been able to be very proficient on a snowboard that day.
Mhm.
Um,
You better at skiing or snowboarding?
Probably skiing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've given up snowboarding now
Yeah.
after a couple of falls. So um,
Fair.
yeah, so I'm much better at skiing. My son is very good at skiing, so I was trying to keep up with him that day.
Mm.
He learned to ski at quite a young age, and I learned in my 20s. So he never quite learned the respect for gravity that you have when you start things as an adult.
Yeah.
So
That's cool. Um, I lost my train of thought. So, where was I going with that? Hmm. Okay, so you get injured, or you have that back pain from the ski
yeah.
incident. You notice that you're lacking strength. So then you go to a physio, and then you do some rehab. What happens after that, or what's kind of that process look like?
Um, so I was probably in physio for about 3 weeks when the lockdown hit here.
Mm,
So I had been, it was fairly early on, and I was starting to do some core strengthening exercises.
mm,
Um, and I just kind of transitioned to doing it online. Um, I was working from home, so it was easy for me to work it into my routine to do it before work.
yeah.
Um, so that that's kind of what it was. And to be honest, I much prefer doing the yoga routines because it's
hmm
physiotherapy exercises tend to be kind of dull and boring.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
yeah, don't tell your wife I said that.
No,
Um,
she knows. Um,
And yeah, so the yoga was something I was familiar with,
yeah.
and I could tell that it was working my core. And there were a few routines. I started with you on YouTube.
Hmm.
There were a few routines that were fairly core specific, so I started doing those at the beginning, and then worked into others as I got more comfortable with it.
Gotcha. So what enabled you to be consistent initially? What do you think?
Um, Well, we were in lockdown, so there wasn't a lot to do.
Hmm.
So the pandemic actually, one of the positives for the pandemic for me was that it helped me to get back into a regular routine of exercise and walking. And
Hmm.
my dog was getting a lot older at that point, so wasn't going for the long walks that we used to do when he was younger.
Hmm.
And so I think what I started doing was doing my yoga before I would sit down to work for the day.
Yeah.
Um, I always found that it was easiest for me to go to the gym in the morning before work. If I left it till later in the day, there were just too many excuses and distractions and other things that could keep me from going to the gym. So I was usually sort of a 6 a.m., 6:30 a.m. at the gym guy, and then I'd get home um, before my son went off to school, and
Hmm.
then take care of him, and then go off to work. So that was a habit that I developed before the pandemic, and so during the pandemic, it just helped me get back into that.
Yeah. Did you have so on days where you didn't really want to do it, or you had to force yourself to do it, or you just didn't feel like doing it? Did you have did you have a conversation with yourself? Was there something that drove you to do it, or some sort of motivation that helped?
For me, it was the back pain. I knew I needed to strengthen my core to get rid of
Hmm.
that. It was pretty quick uh, in terms of starting to recover after I started doing the yoga for
Yeah.
both the back pain and the leg pain that I was having.
Yeah.
Um, so for me, having a quick win like that is always a good motivator and just reinforces that what I'm doing is the right path.
Yeah.
So that I would say that was sort of the main thing that helped me be more consistent.
Hmm.
Um, Once I became a member of Manflow, then I started using the calendar, and that was a lot better as well
Yeah.
because I knew what I had to do. I could plan it out for the week. I didn't have to think about it. I could just get up, open my computer, my iPad, and go to it.
Yeah. That knowing what you're going to be doing ahead of time definitely helps. So how quickly did you notice results? When did you, because it's really helpful to notice results to encourage you to keep doing it, but
Yeah.
how quick was it?
Um, so I would have started middle of March, and I think I joined as a member in April. So it was within a month I started noticing some improvements. Um, I I don't remember exactly, but I would say the back pain largely resolved within that period of time.
That's pretty cool.
And I was starting to notice that the leg pain um, was improving as well. The leg pain was mostly if I was sitting for a period of time, my right leg in particular would start to ache. And as I started doing more Manflow yoga, it it became less and less noticeable, and I
Hmm.
rarely have an issue with it now.
Gotcha. So you were doing some of the core focused routines.
hmm
How did that progress? And how often were you doing those workouts initially?
Probably initially I was doing about 3 a week.
Okay.
Um, and then when I became a member, I started doing the strength foundations. So I started doing
Hmm.
that every day.
Okay.
It was, it was easy for me to fit it into my day before work. So it was, it was a pretty easy transition from 3 days a week to 5 days a week.
Hmm.
Um, and most of it was stuff that I could do. I wasn't necessarily great at it,
Hmm.
but I could definitely do a lot of it. Partly because I had done yoga previously, so I knew a lot of the poses, but
Yeah.
also you give a lot of cues in terms of modifications and using props and so on. So it just made it easy to do.
Got it. Cool. So how did that progress? Did and I don't know, so I'm asking,
Hmm.
but has your is that where you're at now and you're still following just the program, or did that eventually lead into you exploring other areas of your health and wellness or getting curious about, other aspects of it?
Yeah, for the first for most of 2020, I would say I was fairly consistent with doing mindful yoga about 5 times a week.
Hmm.
Um, I started paying a bit more attention to my diet and trying to. I had gained some weight while I was being sedentary, so I was just
Hmm.
trying to be more conscious of what I was eating.
And how
Um,
much can I ask how much did you weigh then? How tall are you?
so I'm 182 centimeters, or just shy of 6 feet, probably 5'11 and 3/4. And at that point, I was probably close to 200 pounds,
Okay.
somewhere between 195 and 200. Um, and over like by the summer, I was down into the 180s,
Okay.
um, partly from being consistent with mental yoga, but also going for making sure that I went for walks at lunchtime,
Hmm.
being more aware of what I was eating. Um, and then over the next year or so, my weight always fluctuates some. Um, and we started cross country skiing in the winter. So I live in Ottawa. We get a lot of snow here.
Hmm.
Um, so that also helped. But the following year, for winter, I decided to buy a stationary bike because I wanted to add some more cardio to my physical therapy, or my exercise regimen. And at that point, I was pretty sure I was not going to go back to gyms.
Hmm.
So I was enjoying working out at home. Any little extra step that I have to do to exercise is a big obstacle, I find. So if I have to leave the house, um, it makes it harder. If I have to drive somewhere to work out, it makes it harder. So if I can just go down into our basement and work out in our little gym area, then that's really easy. So I bought
Right.
a stationary bike, and then I started doing that. Um, I was doing that about 5 times a week, and then I'd follow it with the Manflow yoga routines. Um, then I got COVID, and that was a big setback physically. I found it really difficult to come back from.
Hmm.
So the second half of I guess it was 2022 was a little more difficult. It was a lot easier to stick with the yoga than it was to go back into the cardio. That took me a lot longer to get back into. I'd also we had a big storm here, and we ended up with a tree on our house at one point.
Oh.
So from cleanup, I managed to get myself a good case of tennis elbow. So that was somewhat
Hmm.
limiting, and I ended up back in physiotherapy again. Um, so those were all problems that came up in the latter half of 2022. And I was
Hmm.
able to get back into a fairly consistent routine of biking 3 or 4 times a week, and most of the time I would do yoga 5 times a week still.
Hmm.
I found the challenges really helpful to if I was starting to fall off to get back into a routine. And then last year in 2023, I made the decision I was going to retire, and the foot came off the gas a little bit for a bunch of things, and so I slacked off a little bit on exercising over the course of the fall and into Christmas season, and gained a bunch of weight again. So I'm back on track. Um, I decided, so I had another oh shit moment
Hmm.
where I was either going to have to lose weight or buy new pants. And I'm really cheap, so I didn't want to buy new pants. So I actually did go back to a gym for a while just to see if I could stick with a weight training routine. And I did for a while, and then I decided to just buy some stuff so I can work out at home.
Yeah,
And
that's a
that's going much better. So I'm down about 15 pounds from where I was at the beginning of the year, which is good.
nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's significant.
So I told my wife I'm down to our wedding weight. So
So there's three things that I'm looking at. So you have your yoga phase where you're doing yoga, you're also doing cardio, you you get COVID, right?
yeah,
That that basically, you've got 2 weeks where you're feeling like crap, and then you've got like however many ones where you're just weeks or months where you're just weak. You get tennis elbow, or you say golfer's elbow or tennis elbow,
tennis. Yeah.
tennis elbow, and then you have and then eventually you recover, you fix yourself, and you get back into doing yoga again. Challenges are helpful, and you're also doing weight training now. So
Hmm.
that's pretty cool. So I think one thing that all of us are going to go through, and that all of us that sucks for everybody, but maybe talking about it can be helpful, is the getting injured part. So
Right.
do you want to talk about the golfer's elbow for you, and how how long did it take for you to get better, and what was the process?
Yeah. So I've now had tennis elbow in both arms. So I had had it previously, maybe 10 years ago, and uh, the physio at the time and I both think it was from shoveling snow. Um, m- I probably started physio in July, and I continued until November.
Mm,
And it was a very long process. It wasn't completely resolved when I stopped going to physio, but it was very minimal at that point.
yeah. Well,
Um,
physios, they have a different. They're not trying to keep you for as long as possible. If they're good
right,
physios,
yeah,
they're like they get you back to like, are you okay? No, not are you perfect. Are you okay? Great, get out. I have
yeah,
other people to help.
exactly. And the other thing that I did was I started having massage therapy, and I
Mm,
found that that helped quite a lot because probably a lot of my tennis elbow is related to tightness in my shoulders and also just upper body weakness in general.
hmm
Um, so that started to clear up. Um, my dog also started, he was 15 and just started not being able to go up the stairs and stuff. So I was carrying him up and down the stairs a lot. So I ended up re-aggravating tennis elbow in my right arm, but I also managed to get tennis elbow in my left arm because he was not a small dog. And so that's what I've been in physio for most recently.
hmm
There've been a bunch of things that I've had to modify. So I find doing planks with my hands down really aggravates it.
hmm
So I'll either do a plank on fists using blocks or forearms. So that's an easy modification to do. There was a time where doing something like a bicep curl would just kill,
hmm
and so I had to be very careful about that, and I worked with physio on how to increase that gradually. So we started with fairly low weights and worked our way up. Um, when the tennis elbow was really bad, I wouldn't even be able to pick up my teacup. Um,
Wow.
so it was quite severe on the right. So so there was quite a lengthy period of time where I was limited in what I could do. Um, the pain is a really good motivator to keep doing your physio exercises. So,
Mm,
I was very diligent about doing that. And I think that is probably the main thing. If anybody ends up with an injury, make sure you do your exercises if you're given them by a physio.
yeah.
Um,
Did you have a way that you reminded yourself to do them?
I worked it into my whole exercise routine. So I would bike, then I would do physio, and then I would do yoga.
Okay.
I just combined them all. Um, and there were always some days where I was a little crunched for time, so I would either drop the biking, the amount of time I would bike, or I would pick a shorter yoga routine so that I would make sure I'd be able to do the physio, because that was really a big focus and goal of mine, is to recover from that.
Yeah. So you brought up this, you brought this up kind of indirectly, but you said that you couldn't do a plank, so you modified, and I
Hmm.
just want to point out how important that is to just
Hmm.
staying consistent with exercise in general. Because yes, it's really frustrating when
Yeah,
you can't do the exercise that you want to do, but also recognizing, oh, I can't do this, but there's so many other things that I can do, and staying consistent like that. Do you want to speak to your experience with that?
sure. So I would always try the routines and see what I could do. Um, but I got to the point where I knew that there were certain things that would aggravate my tennis elbow. So any kind of hands down, where I had to flex my hands,
Yeah.
I would modify those to either forearm or a fist. Um, those were the main things that I found were problematic. Most of the other yoga poses didn't aggravate it.
Mhm.
And there's a wrist and elbow routine that I would do every once in a while
Oh
that
yeah.
also helped quite a bit. It was very, very consistent with what I was doing from physio. So
Hmm.
every once in a while, I just fire that up. Um, so that's kind of what I found in terms of modifications. Um, there's a lot of balance stuff that I have trouble with,
Hmm.
and I'm 60 years old, so I'm not super flexible. So there are a couple of things like side angle I have a lot of trouble with. Um, half moon is near impossible for me.
Half moon is a really weird pose for
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah. So I move the block around
Hmm.
so that I'm more stable if I have to do half moon, and I just accept the fact that I'm not going to be pretty. Um, I'm not recording videos, so I don't have to look good. Um, and then every once in a while there'll be something that I just kind of sit out. Um, like I'll try it and it's not working, so I'll just kind of do what I can.
Yeah.
Um, so like I might go into a pyramid, or um, if it's some kind of plank, I'll go to forearms quite often.
Hmm. Yeah.
I never do the yoga push-ups
Hmm.
anymore. I think I'm probably at a point where I can probably start to try them again.
Yeah.
But I want to give it a little bit longer before I start doing that.
Try getting push-up bars.
Yeah, I have. So I was trying with some dumbbells,
Yeah.
and it was helpful, but uh, it still would aggravate the elbow
Yeah.
a bit. So I
There's
just
this there's this like as seen on TV product from like the 2000s called the Perfect Push-up that I still
yeah,
have, that I think it works great for that. So yeah, if you're
yeah,
having pain there, that could also help. But
yeah, and so that's something that I've looked at possibly getting as well.
mhm.
Yeah.
So then the next phase is the yoga and weights phase.
Mhm.
So I'm curious for you, and because there's a lot of people in our community who um, they've been consistent with yoga, and they're like, I don't want to do weights. I don't want to go pump iron, because there's this perception that like resistance training is you have to lift like Arnold. You have to
Yeah,
just be in the gym lifting a ton of weight and screaming and grunting, and you can if you want, but like
yeah.
there's so many different ways to resistance train. So what was the difference for you in terms of how you felt day to day and the results of yoga and cardio versus how do you feel with doing resistance training, cardio, and yoga?
Um, so I started the year by incorporating resistance bands for resistance training. I was just finding it wasn't enough. Um,
Okay.
uh, like I never like if you're lifting weights, you should feel like you're exhausted at some point and maybe a
Yeah.
little bit stiff the next day. I never really felt that with the resistance bands. So I went to dumbbells mostly, and So what I've noticed, so I guess I've been doing weight training since April. It's now September, so close to 6 months. Um, I'm just starting to find that um, my endurance is better. So some of the yoga poses are a lot easier.
Mm,
Um, Mostly where I notice it is going up and down stairs.
hmm,
And I noticed that with yoga as well, that going up and down stairs just got to be easier. It wasn't, um, uh, it's not that it was painful, it just got easier. And
yeah.
then with the weights, I'm finding that it's easier still. I'm just finding overall I feel better. My I've lost some weight, which is good. And my wife and I kayak, and we bike, and I golf, and so all of those are a little bit easier as well. Where I really notice it is in kayaking, because
Hmm.
I've always had very weak upper body, and so that's one of the main points I want to improve with the weight training. So I am noticing that paddling is much easier, and my back doesn't get as fatigued as quickly since I've started the
Hmm.
weight training.
Cool.
So,
So the other question I had, so a lot of people in the Manful Yoga community are also at the stage where they've been retired for a few years, or
mhm,
they're retiring, or they're like, or they're about to retire. What's the what's like retiring in fitness? Like, what are the you mentioned that you kind of took the stepped off the gas a little bit.
mhm,
I've also heard the opposite end where people stop working and they're trying to find a purpose and they're like, well, now my purpose is working out and my
mhm.
health. So what's your experience been with that?
Yeah, so I took the foot off the gas sort of my last 6 months at work. There was a lot of stuff going on at work, and my dog was not well, and so there's just a lot of things going on. And then when I retired, suddenly I had all this time, and so I could spend more time doing my cardio and yoga, and added in some resistance training. So for me, retirement's been great because I now have time to do a lot of things that I probably could have done before. But when you're working, when you have kids, when you have family responsibilities, or you just have a busy social life,
Hmm.
it can be really difficult. And exercising becomes one more thing that you have to do, and it just
Yeah.
increases stress for a lot of people. So I've made it a priority for myself in retirement. I watched both my parents get old, and it didn't go well for my mom. She was very sedentary for most of her life, and her aging was very, very unpleasant. My dad
Hmm.
remained active his whole life, and he was very active until the last year of his life, probably, and so he was in his late 80s. So
And
um,
how old was your mom?
my mom was 82 when she passed away.
Mm.
And she, in her late 50s, she had a heart attack, and that really debilitated her. But the heart, she smoked and was sedentary, so was overweight. And so there were a lot of factors that played in for her.
Hmm.
Um, but my dad always, always, always would go for a walk. And, he didn't do what a lot of people would consider traditional exercise, but he always kept busy. He grew up on a farm, so he was always doing stuff outside,
Hmm.
and just was used to it. He had a fairly physical job. He was an electrician in a steel plant, so there's a lot of climbing ladders and just long distances to walk and carrying heavy equipment and so on. Um, so when you have those two extremes in your life, it helps you make a decision which way you want to go. Um, and my mother-in-law also remained very active, and so she was in very good shape until she passed away in her late 80s as well.
Hmm.
Um, so that's been a lot of the inspiration for me remaining active. I also, my career was in healthcare, so I saw people who did not remain active and who had very unhealthy lifestyles and all of the complications that they had, whether it was diabetes or heart disease, strokes, arthritis, etc. So there's a lot that you can do by remaining active and trying to strengthen your body that will help to prevent things like diabetes, heart disease, chronic pain that I think people overlook.
Mhm. What was your job in healthcare?
I was a pharmacist. I still am a
Okay.
pharmacist. I still work some, but yeah. So you see people coming in and getting 10, 15 medications, and as soon as somebody has a heart attack or if they're diagnosed with diabetes, they're on a minimum of five
Wow.
medications. So my goal is to not be on any of those medications. Um,
Yeah.
so it's quite a spiral once you have some of those things come in to
Yeah.
your life. Yeah, and there've been a few people in the Manfo community who've talked about losing weight and stopping medications that they were taking for some chronic disease, and
Yeah.
that's a really good sign that exercise and being more conscious about your life and your lifestyle can make big improvements.
Yeah. There's definitely a strong group of, there's definitely a strong sentiment among I would say, majority of people within the Manful Yoga community about this desire to stay away from, not necessarily stay away from medications, but not get to the point where they're reliant on
Mhm.
medications long term. Um, and also, like you were saying before, this desire to not end up like somebody they saw who was older than them, who didn't take as good care of themselves, who wasn't active. Um, so yeah, I think those are two things that a lot of people can relate to.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. So how helpful has the just, you mentioned the Manful Yoga community, but in general, how helpful has community been to your overall health and wellness?
Um, so I would say the Manflow community has been very helpful, especially early on in the pandemic, because I think there was probably more activity because people were at home with not a lot to
Hmm.
do. But
Right.
you definitely see it when there's a community challenge and people start talking about what they're doing and challenges and so on. Anybody who puts out a question gets an answer right away. So it's really good to be able to see that sort of support.
Hmm.
On the personal side, I have a number of friends that I do different activities with, whether it's cycling, golf, kayaking. My wife and I do a lot of stuff together as
Hmm.
well. So it's for me, exercising is easier if you do it with somebody else,
Yeah.
or it's easier to get started if you do it with somebody else as well. But for me, I find once I get started and I get into a groove, I'm fine to do things on my own.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the things that I really disliked about going to the gym,
Mm.
is, you go to the gym by yourself and
Yeah. So you're with other people, but ironically, you feel like you're in a silo by yourself.
exactly, you're alone together. And there's a definite gym culture that I don't like. It's very, we're here to pump you up sort of thing.
Hmm.
And I've never liked that. Uh, so it's for me, it's easier to work out at home by myself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely more convenient. Um,
Yeah, and that's probably one of the really big things is, if you go to the gym, then you have to get your stuff ready. You have to get in the car. You have to drive to the gym. You have to get changed. You have to go out, and then you have to know what you're going to do. Whereas I can just go downstairs and start working out anytime I want. I still do it between, like I try to start by 7:30 most days,
mm,
even though I'm retired and I don't need to get up. I still do.
yeah. I mean, but that's great. You finish your workout by like 9, and you just have the whole day to. I mean, you
Yeah.
have other things to do, but um, I've never been able to lift weights in the morning. I can do some yoga in the morning, some like
Hmm.
lower intensity, medium
Yeah.
intensity stuff in the morning. I go for walks in the morning. I like cycling in the morning, taking my kids to daycare on the bike. But like, yeah, if you said that I had to lift weights in the morning, I could probably do it. But
Hmm.
yeah, I'm not one
Yeah,
of those. So I respect you for being able to get this stuff done in the morning. That's pretty cool.
yeah. It's just I know if I leave it to later in the day, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, I remember you saying that before.
Yeah,
Just excuses come up. It's easy
yeah.
to not do it. Um, so what's the next thing that you want to work on in your health and fitness? What's the next initiative?
Um, I haven't really thought about a next step. I'm still focused on trying to build up some upper body strength because I think that's been a big issue with a number of my injuries. Um, and then we'll go from there, um, see how bulked up I want to get,
Yeah,
which at 60 is not easy to do.
it's hard.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, it
it's
takes a
hard at
lot of.
any time, but I think um, one thing I would like to do is get back to doing yoga 3 to 4 times a week. Right now, I'm doing it 2 to 3 times,
Mhm.
and I would like to go back to 3 to 4. I just find that's sort of the sweet spot for me.
Yeah,
Um, the doing it 5 times is good. The challenges that are 6 days kill me.
yeah,
I
yeah.
just, I just,
We've learned to make options for those
yeah,
ones. Try to do 3 to 6 instead of
yeah,
definitely 6, and definitely 7 a week didn't work out. So yeah,
yeah, yeah. And
modify
there
that
are
one.
probably some people, maybe 10 years ago I would have been fine doing it, but just I am starting to notice I need more time to recover, and
Mm,
injuries take a long time to get
yeah.
over now.
So, I forgot to ask this, but you were talking about, it sounds like you have a really good support network isn't the right word. You have close friends. You have close friends
I
that you
do.
hang out with.
I do.
You get to you do stuff with your wife. You guys go kayak together. Me listening to that, I'm curious, based on what you know about Americans, do you think that there is more value on relationships, people in Canada versus people in the US?
Um, I don't know if you can really make that kind of generalization or not. I think it's very individual.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a textbook introvert in a lot of ways, so I have
Hmm.
good friends, but I don't like to be in big crowds.
Yeah.
Um, I can turn it on if I need to.
Hmm.
I used to have a staff of 23, so I can lead a big group. But my interactions tend to be kind of one-on-one,
Hmm.
or with a small group of people. Um, so it depends. Some people need to be around other people all the time.
Hmm.
And some people are more like me, where it's prescribed amounts of contact with other people, and then you need some quiet time.
Yeah. Uh, cool. Yeah. I'm reading the Oprah book right now. Oprah and I forgot what the other guy's name is, but it's The Art and the Science of Happiness. Um, and there's a section on it talking about introverts versus extroverts and how the introverts are more inclined to have deeper, more meaningful relationships with
Mhm.
a small amount of people, whereas the extroverts they have a lot more
Yeah,
relationships, but they're more surface level. They don't go as deep.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a good book called Quiet. I forget the author, but the subtitle is "The Power of Introverts in a World That Won't Stop Talking." Uh,
Oh, that's great. That's such like a passive aggressive like subject title written by an introvert. That makes me
yeah,
smile.
and
Um,
so when I read it,
Everybody
I said,
shut
"Oh,
up.
yeah, yeah." When I read it, I said, "Oh, this really explains our son." And my wife was like, "This explains you." So yeah, so I am a fairly classic introvert in a lot of ways,
Yeah,
which is where working out alone in my basement really comes in handy.
right. Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, it's not that we don't love you. It's that we just like being by ourselves too.
Exactly.
Um, yeah. All right. Well, I've got 4 quick rapid fire
Sure.
questions for you. What do you think is one habit, belief, or mindset that's helped you the most with your overall health and wellness?
I think the main thing is that I want to age like my dad.
Mm.
So I want to remain active as long as possible. And he was still going at 87. He needed a walker towards the end, but he was quite a dynamo.
Yeah. What's one thing that you do for your health that you believe is often overlooked or undervalued?
Um, that is a good question. Um, I think I, I joke around with a lot of people that since I've retired, I do nothing a lot. And I think some quiet time where you're not on your phone and you're not looking at screens, maybe you're reading or just gardening, something nice and quiet for your mind to have a rest is really underrated.
That was the exact answer that Jesse just gave in the
Ah,
last interview.
well,
So
he's
I think,
half Canadian, so
oh, you're
it's
right. He
not
is.
surprising he is. Yes.
Yeah. You guys are onto something up there. What's the most stressful part of your day to day life?
Um, since I retired, there's honestly very little stress. Sometimes I'll have a day where I have appointments or lunch dates that I have to juggle around. So that's about as difficult as it gets most of the time. We're planning a few trips, so that's taking up a lot of our time, um, which is good stress. But for the most part, it's not. My life has gotten really unstressed since I stopped working.
Hmm. And your son's been at college for how long? Or uni for how long?
He finished his bachelor's degree in 2020,
Oh,
just as the
okay.
pandemic was hitting, and he's just gone back to school. He started a master's, so
Okay.
he's 26.
Got it. All right. So you still have to worry about him until he gets a job, but after that.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 Even after that, you still worry. So,
Yeah. So what's your best piece of advice for men who want to be healthier?
don't delay. Start something small.
That was literally
Uh,
what Jesse just said. You guys are like cheating. You guys are
yeah, we talked. Yeah, no, seriously. Start start doing something small. Go for a walk. One thing that I've started doing that I've found very helpful recently is tracking my food to find out
Mm.
exactly how much I'm actually eating. And I was kind of surprised at how much I was eating because it doesn't seem like it.
Carbs
Um,
that up, man.
yeah, and so I was very heavy on the carb side. So I've cut back a bit on carbs. I've tried to get carbs and protein kind of balanced, and I find the fat sort of takes care of itself.
Mhm.
Um, so that's something else that if one of your goals is weight loss, get a food tracker app of some sort and do that for a couple of weeks and just see where you are.
Cool. All right. Well, those are all my questions. So, Barry,
Okay.
thank you for doing this and sharing your insight and sharing your experience with all this stuff.
Well,
A
hopefully it's
lot of
helpful to
really good,
somebody.
good stuff in here. Yeah, I
Okay.
think it will be. Definitely don't contact Barry in the Facebook group, but he is there. But no, I don't know. Do you want people to be able to say hi to you or?
Sure, they can say hi if they want. Depends if I'm
All
in
right.
an introverted moment, I might not reply. Um,
Yeah. So next time we're doing a challenge, be sure to call out Barry and say, Barry, we need your accountability post following along to the challenge.
yes, yes, yes. I don't like posting pictures of myself, so um,
That's okay. Hey, that's
yeah,
your next thing. That's your next
yeah,
health and
maybe,
wellness
yeah,
thing.
maybe, yeah. We'll see. So,
All right. Cool.
okay.
All right. Well, once again, Barry, thank you for joining me on this member interview series. And I look forward to seeing you in the members area and beyond. And guys listening in, I hope this inspires you to be a better man.